class 8 in Masechet Sanhedrin. We're Daf Sadi Bet Amud Aleph in the middle of the page. I want to give you a slight introduction to what we're going to be studying about today. The real topic that we're studying today is the relationship between God and man. How can we establish a relationship with God if he's completely different than us, right? I mean, let's say, for example, some people, they establish relationships with different life forms. They have pets, they have Dil Mikodesh Lechol, a person has a dog. So there's a certain commonality. I don't know, the dog might smile or get excited, and then the person smiles and the person gets excited. There's a certain commonality with that lower life form. In the case of the dog, it's a lower life form. So a person has certain feelings, right? But when you talk about a higher life form, you could also potentially have a interaction. So Yaakov Avinu, he has an interaction with a higher life form. In the Parashat Veishlach, he wrestles an angel. So that's an interaction because there was some commonality between Yaakov and the angel, and they're wrestling and they're struggling, and it's more, maybe some people would say it was an intellectual, spiritual struggle, but there's something there that they can have this interaction as a human being on one side, an angel on the other side, and there it is. And then Yaakov Avinu ends up hurting his Gid Hanasheh. He yanks it out of place, the sciatic nerve, so you see that it was a real interaction. Okay. God is completely different than anything we are, right? Just so you understand. And I'll prove to you. Shalom Aleichem, Beruchim Abbaim. We have a book there showing the place. And we have some sushi before you sit. Okay, get yourself a plate. We got sushi. You just had dinner. Okay, all right. You can throw your coat on the sofa there. Right. Shalom Aleichem. Oh, we can need some more chairs here. All right. Here, sit next to me here. Somebody sit next to Natan and somebody sit next to Jeff. Okay. Looks like we're going to open up the air conditioning soon. Okay. So how can you have this? How can you have a relationship with God if He's completely different than anything we are? And I just want to explain to you. So, before there was a world, what was that? What was it? Meaning, God decides to create the world. Okay. When God creates the world, what is there before creation? Meaning, are there any rules? Are there any scientific rules that somehow impose themselves upon God's creation of the world? I'll give you an example. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Let's say I want to draw something. I'm an artist and I want to draw. So I have before me certain paint brushes and certain colors, right? Let's say it's oil paint. And now I have a canvas. So I can make a beautiful painting, but I'm limited by the particular colors I have, and by the particular texture of the paint I'm using and the type of canvas. So for example, the canvas, let's say it's 2 feet by 3 feet, let's say. So I can't make a 10-foot painting because the canvas is 2 feet by 3 feet. So what I'm saying is, what rules were there limiting God in His creation of the world? Right? So for example, before God created the world, there was empty space, right? But there really wasn't empty space because God created empty space. So
there were no rules.
There were no rules. So there was actually nothing. So there was no scientific rules. There was even the law of contradiction. The law of contradiction says two opposites can't coexist, right? It's either this or that. It's either dark or light. It's either up or down. But before God created the world, there was no law of contradiction. That's why it's God who separates light from darkness. God does that. Meaning even that rule, which does seem so simple, 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4, didn't exist. So all that there was before creation was God. So when He created the world, anything in the world is subject to the laws that He created. So it's completely different than God. So we are, by definition, as God's creatures, completely different than what He is. So how can we establish a relationship with God? You understand the question? It's a good question, right? So people like to say, "Oh, God is love." Okay, nice. Whatever. I don't know what that even means, but so a person has a certain emotions, and then he projects his emotions upon God. That's in the Western world. But Muslims, many Muslims, not saying all, I don't believe in generalizing, but let's say many Muslims, I think God is actually hate. They have a very hateful view of God, right? So they think God loves it when they, do barbaric acts. Okay, so the question is, how do we relate to God without projecting ourselves onto God, right? Because, God created us in His image. but it's very easy for us to impose our image upon him, which of course is a mistake. So that's what the Gemara is going to be dealing with. So you understand the problem? It's an interesting problem. What's the basis for a relationship with God who's completely different? That's going to get you a cup of water? Have water.
I'm good.
You want some sushi? Where right there? Where's sushi? Yeah, no? Okay. It's kosher. It's good, kosher.
That's why we don't want
Okay, all right. And nobody's being videotaped here, so nobody has to be embarrassed. Look, you see the camera? It's just me. I'm the only one on the camera. Okay, so that's the question. So first of all, why don't you share the Gemara, Natan, so so before we even read this, we're reading now a statement of Rabbi Elazar. Okay, this statement of Rabbi Elazar, before we even read this statement, I want to tell you something that the same Rabbi Elazar speaks about in Masechet Hagigah. In Masechet Hagigah, it's another Masechet Gemara, Daf Yod Bet Amud Aleph. I'm going to read to you what he says. The Amar Rabbi Elazar, and the reason I'm reading it is because it serves as a background for what he says here. Okay, the Amar Rabbi Elazar. Okay, here it is. And not in your Gemara, in my Gemara. Or Shebara Hakadosh Baruch Hu B'Yom Rishon. On the first day, God created light. And I've spoken about the fact that the light that God created on the first day was not the physical light, because the physical light comes from the sun, and the sun was created on the fourth day. So if someone says, Shalom, I'll bring one of those chairs and just pull, And since the sun was created on the fourth day, so we know that the sunlight that we see didn't exist on the first day. So what's the light that God created on the first day? So that's what the Gemara deals with in Masechet Hagigah. What is this light? In fact, there wasn't even space. Now light travels through space. When was space created? Space was created on the second day, right? So there was no space. So what is this light? There was no space. There was no possibility of light traveling. So Or Shebara Hakadosh Baruch Hu B'Yom Rishon, the light that God created on the first day of creation. Adam Sofebo Misof Olam Ad Sofo. When Adam was created, he had access to this light, and this light opened up his brain. And the same way we use our physical eyes to see the world, but how far can you see? 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, whatever we see, okay. The light that God created on the first day, when Adam HaRishon was created, he was able to see all the way from one side of the world to the other side, meaning it was a light that enabled the brain to understand fully the world within which Adam existed, right? What happened to that light? Came the days of Dor Mabul, when people became violent, when the world was filled with Hamas. And when the world was filled with Hamas, Hashem said, enough is enough. And then came the generation of Nimrod, when Nimrod built Migdal Babel, and he enslaved humanity, and people enjoyed being slaves, right? People wanted the enslavement. What happened? He saw these people are corrupt. They're perverted. God took this light away, said enough is enough. I've given the light to humanity. Humanity is not interested in this light. And it's a waste of something beautiful, something precious. So I'm going to hide it. Shene'emar, ve'imana mershaim oram. God took away from the wicked the light that could have been theirs. So that's very interesting. Meaning there is a light that each one of us deserves. It's ours. But if a person doesn't deserve it, God says, I'm not going to give it to you. Okay, so this is the light. So the light that we're talking about is a certain light of intelligence, okay? Now, where does this light come from? What does it do? So now we're going to read the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Here, read it with me. The Amar Rabbi Elazar. Gedola de'ah, shenitena ben shete otiyot. Wisdom, intelligence is something unbelievable. It's not natural to the world. There's certain things that are natural to the world, right? The DNA structure, the molecules. But then there's a certain wisdom that's above nature, right? And to emphasize how special this wisdom is, There's a pasuk in the Torah, we're going to read the pasuk now, where the word wisdom appears before two names of God. That's unusual, right? So you see the name of God, then the word wisdom, and then the name of God. So meaning the wisdom is somehow encompassed by God's existence. God's existence encompasses wisdom. Right? You understand? So the pasuk says, "Shene'emar ki el de'ot Adonai." There's a pasuk that says, God encompasses all of human understanding. Okay? So there, you have a mind, you have a mind, you have a mind. Everybody here has a mind. Everybody has a particular perspective. Everybody thinks my life is very unusual. You understand yourself in a way that I never could, right? Similarly, I understand myself in a way that you never could. We all think that we're unique and special. Fair enough, no problem. So each one of us has a very unique mind, and God's presence encompasses our mind. Ki El, that's the name of God. El, De'ot, wisdom. Hashem, the name of God. You see how the name of God is a sandwich for De'ah, meaning De'ah requires God. So what is that? I want to tell you what my father wrote in one of his greatest books. It's called Homo Mysticus. It's a guide to the guide of Harambam. So Harambam wrote a book, Dalalat al-Ha'irin, which is the guide to the perplexed. And my father wrote a guide to the guide. Okay, so in this book he explains the Gemara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekol baro. Okay, in this book he explains the Harambam, and Harambam deals with this light. Harambam deals, what is this light? And what it is, there is an active intelligence in the world, and this active intelligence, it flows from God, and it goes to human beings. This is called Chokhmah. There's a pasuk in Daniel that we read, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Yahir Hakimah al-Hakimim. God is the source of the intelligence that enters people's minds. Not everybody accesses this intelligence, but I just want to give you one example. You think it's not just in religion. Albert Einstein, he thought about the theory of relativity. Okay. Isaac Newton thought about the law of gravity. Every scientist that contributes something has a unique idea. In Judaism, we have two things. We have prophets. Prophets are people who have direct contact with the message of God, where God is speaking something personal to the prophet or something about the nation of Israel. Put that on the side. We're not talking about nevuah. We're talking about this active intelligence. There is wisdom in the world where God opens up our minds and allows us to discover things. I want to give it in the realm of art. I once saw an amazing TED Talk. One of the earliest ones from like years ago. And there was this person, a literary figure, a person who wrote literature. And she was talking about how one of the problems that authors have now, writing a book is a type of art, right? Same way painting. If you're a painter, it's a type of art. Anybody who produces, it's a type of art. For us, for the Chachamim, for the Jewish people, the greatest art form is derasha, is studying Torah and teaching the Torah. Like when you get up on knees on Shabbat morning and you give a derasha, that's an art form in our thinking, right? But there's different types of art forms. So she's talking about literature and how sometimes you just have writer's block and you can't figure out, why can't I think of anything? Now, Albert Einstein himself, he was the greatest scientist ever, and he got to a point where he stopped discovering scientific theories. I mean, the theory of relativity was so great. The special theory of relativity, the general theory of relativity, the scientific background for producing the nuclear bomb. I mean, he revolutionized science, right? 4-dimensional space-time. So, now, I'm not saying this to be negative to Albert Einstein. I'm saying this to point out that if it's just the person, why did he stop creating new thoughts? Why? Like, what was stopping? So now getting back to this artist. So she says sometimes people want to write a book, they have writer's block. They can't think of anything. So, well, why is that? So the Jewish answer is, there is an active intelligence that comes from God, but it's selective. It's not all the time to the same person constantly. Meaning, the minute that active, you may get a spark of wisdom and you think of something nobody thought of and you come up with this discovery and it's yours. It doesn't mean you'll have another discovery. It doesn't mean you'll have another one and another one. Some people do. Well, some people are fertile for many, many years. but some people stop. So she's talking about writer's block. Getting back to this lady, she said the most unbelievable thing. I forgot the name of the poet. There was a poet, a well-known American poet from the 19th century. She lived in Kansas, where they have tornadoes in the summer, and that's like a thing there. And she describes how suddenly she'll get inspired and she'll have a poem, and the poem will come to her like a storm. And it actually felt like a storm was coming, and it was a little terrifying for her. But then the words would come in, and she'd just take a piece of paper and start writing the words. So different artists have this experience, by the way. It's not just her. When Michelangelo used to carve out, from marble, he would make these amazing sculptures. He would see it in his mind. It wasn't like he just chiseled. No, he would actually see it in his mind before it was even finished, and then he would produce it. It was like in the stone. He was just taking it out of the stone. Getting back, this is what, the sixth time or the seventh time, getting back to this lady, talking about the poet from 19th century America who would write poems and just the words would come to her. This is the craziest thing. So sometimes she'd be terrified because, as I said, the inspiration would come like a storm. Yeah.
Is it something like you keep a pen by your bed and you dream something and you write it? Right?
Exactly. So she would. So yes. Sometimes while you're sleeping, a certain, let's call it, inspirational thought comes to you and you think of it, and then you better write it down, because if you go back to sleep, you might forget it. Yeah. You might forget it, so write it then.
You will forget it.
Yeah, exactly. I've done that before, by the way. I've done that, where like suddenly I have something and I have to write down the chidush, because I'm afraid if I wait till the morning, I'll forget the chidush.
So is that part of that?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it because we're in a different dimension?
Because when you're dreaming, your thoughts are now free. So your mind is now not, because there's so many things that clutter us, right? So we're always cluttered by 1,000,001 things. And suddenly your mind is free, and the malach, it's a malach that comes that speaks to us, then you get the message. That's why you sometimes have, by the way, and I've said this before I've said this in this class, right? You already know this, that before October 7th, there was people who had dreams where they knew that there was going to be a massacre of terrorists coming in, and day 46, and then you saw day 46 was the day that Bibi finally negotiated the release of hostages. So there is something that comes from God. There's no explanation for that. You can't explain it. By the way, I can give you the YouTube video. She was talking about this on October 10th. That 46 days after October 7th, something is going to happen with the hostages. It was like, what? And it's there. It's on YouTube. You see the date that it was uploaded. It's all there. But anyway, getting back to this lady. So here's the crazy part. So I said that this poet, she would have this storm, and it would be scary. And the storm would come, and suddenly the words would enter her mind, and she'd write down the words. Sometimes she'd get so terrified, she'd run away from the storm like she was running away from a tornado. And she writes that it would be like a wind coming from her, but she didn't want to have the wind because she was afraid. And then the wind would kind of blow back this way. And when it blew back this way, she would write the words backwards. And it would be a poem, but then she would realize, what the heck did I just write? And it was like everything was backwards, because the wind would come back the other way, and it just would enter her mind that way. It's like crazy stuff. And like, this has all been documented, and people who are artists, who have like some intellectual, let's say, a creativity, they'll tell you this is what happens, okay? Like I myself, I told when I was in Israel, like I would just wake up in the morning and have the derashah for Shabbat like on my lips, like it would be just right there. I wouldn't even have to like prepare anything, because say, wow, Rabbi, you spent so much time preparing the derashah. Well, actually, no, I just went to sleep and it just was on my lips. This is what happened to me in Israel. So I'm saying it happened to me in Israel because I don't want people to get upset in the committee and say, you're really not spending enough time. No, but I'm saying that as people who have artistic creativity, they can attest to the way this works, and it's really weird stuff. Ki el de'ot Adonai. So what are we saying here in the Gemara? What is the Eliezer saying? The reason de'ah is encompassed by the two names of God, El, name number one, de'ot, wisdom, Amonai, name number two, is because the active intelligence comes from God and goes back to God. Explain that. It comes from God and goes back to God. What does that mean? I'll explain to you. In Judaism, you want to have an experience of God, right? So God does something to you, right? And now we're not talking about Goyim anymore. We're talking about Am Yisrael. I just brought you the example of Goyim because the wisdom, this intelligence goes to Goyim differently than it goes to us, in the sense that We'll have Torah. They'll only have science. They'll only have intelligence. I'm not putting it down. We'll have science and intelligence. How there's so many Nobel? Why do you think you have so many Nobel Prize winners in Judaism? Well, how can that be? This is the answer. You see why? Precisely because we're plugged into this connection with God through the Torah and Mitzvot, we are more likely to suddenly come up with a new idea in literature, a new idea in medicine, a new idea in agriculture, right? This is what I do. Is it's ridiculous. Like you look at what we contribute to the world. Just Nobel Peace Prizes. Actually, that's a bad example. I take that back. Yeah, but like chemistry, physics, astronomy. It's just unbelievable what the Jews have. So I want to tell you now why El Deot Adonai. What does that mean now in the Jewish context? So until now, I was just kind of talking general humanity, Jewish context. Go ahead. I'll take your question.
Was this naturally created when God created the world? And also, why was it created on day one if no animals really got some intelligence?
All right. Because the wisdom is not dependent on us.
So it's naturally created?
It's dependent on God. So God's presence is enough to create this wisdom, this light. So this light on the first day comes from God by God's wish. It's not automatic. I want to make it clear. God willed it so. God wanted it to be so. So it was so. Vayomer Elohim yahi or, vahi or. It was God's will and wish to create this light. But it's through this light that God communicates with humanity. So this light was already there from the beginning of creation, right? Because don't forget, he created the Malachim also. The Malachim have a higher access to this light than we do, right? So it was already there at the very beginning of creation. Let's get back to the now. El Deot Adonai. What does that mean? So there's a light that comes from God. When you experience this light as a Jew, you experience it as God telling you, hello. Are you paying attention? That's what God is saying. He wants us to wake up to his presence. Because we get so sucked up in our lives and work and problems and family and you know what it is. I don't have to repeat it. So it's like God saying, like, hello. Are you listening? So he directs us. He wants us to give him his attention. Right? So we give him his attention. And now that our attention is back to God. So it starts with God, El, the light comes from God, but then it shifts us from our earthly realm here where we're kind of like totally immersed in whatever existential questions or whatever thing. And suddenly God says, and I want you now to direct your attention to me. So you see it comes from God, but then it goes back to God. It starts from God as God saying, hello. And then it goes back to God by us saying, here I am. You see that? Now you understand El Deot Adonai? You got it? Yes? Because God sometimes has a way. He wants us to have a relationship with him. So it's through this intelligence, through this special light. Now sometimes the light is painful. Sometimes it could be a painful experience with God. Like what happened now in Israel, by the way. I want to tell you, like, it's just crazy. Like what's happening in Israel. Like I just saw this video today. And I was in Tel Aviv like 20 years. I lived in Ra'anana. I lived in Tel Aviv for a little while. I used to go to Tel Aviv every day for work, and it was a very secular city. There was no such thing as people just spontaneously praying. It's just like, no. In fact, even if there was people praying, the people who weren't praying would get annoyed at the people praying. What are you doing? This is, why are you imposing religion? Nobody's imposing religion, but that's the way they viewed it. Okay. Like today I saw a scene, and maybe some of you saw it also on Instagram. So there was a zakot, there was sirens in Tel Aviv, and people were in the mall in Tel Aviv. And the mall in Tel Aviv, I know the mall, it's a very secular mall. You don't see people with kippot. Most of the women there were wearing pants or skirts, short skirts, whatever. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm like describing to you who these people are. It's Tel Aviv, it's a secular mall. And suddenly there's an azakah, everybody has to go downstairs to the parking garage where it's like protected against bombs. And they're all there, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? They're all singing Shila Ma'alot. It's a song, Shila Ma'alot. I'm like, what? They were literally there singing, like you think it's a yeshiva, a group of yeshiva boys? No, it's regular secular people in Tel Aviv singing Shila Ma'alot because they realize that this bomb's coming and they're afraid and they're praying to God and they're saying, my help will come from God. It's like, what? So you see how God has a really effective way of slapping us in the face and causing us to turn and give God our attention, right? I mean, it's like right here, you see it. It's unbelievable. It's actually a miracle. If somebody told me, in your lifetime, you're going to see people in Tel Aviv spontaneously singing Shila Ma'alot together, I'm like, right, okay, sure. That's going to happen, right? As soon as the Jets and the Giants are in the Super Bowl together and we have a Subway Super Bowl series, right? That would have been my answer, right? They're both doing poorly this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so who knows? Maybe there's hope. Maybe if that happened in Israel, maybe next year. Okay.
It's not that important.
Not that. Like that, you're right. It's not that important. It really isn't. Okay, so that's Kiel Dot Adonai. Okay, so let's continue now. Ve'amar Rabbi Elazar, Gadol Mikdash Shenitan Ben Shete Otiyot. Rabbi Elazar says another statement. Second statement of Rabbi Elazar, the Bet HaMikdash. Also, you see the word Mikdash. Mikdash refers to the Bet HaMikdash, right? And what is so? How do we know that the Bet HaMikdash is great? Is something unbelievable? Because also you see the word Bet HaMikdash between two names of God. Shene'emar Pa'alta Adonai Mikirash Adonai Konenu Yadecha. Right. So this is it. We read this in the Az Yashir Moshe. Az Yashir Moshe. We have the Shirat Hayam. We read it every day. Vayosha Adonai. And in this Shirat Hayam, you have Tevi'emo v'tita'emo be'hanachalatecha. You will bring the Jewish people and you will plant them in Israel, in the holy mountain of God, which is where the Beit HaMikdash will be. Machon l'shivtecha pa'alta Adonai mikedash Adonai kenunu yadecha. So you see how the word mikedash is between the one name of God and the other name of God, right? Machon l'shivtecha pa'alta Adonai. God, you have established or you have set up a place for your abode, meaning for the Shekhinah, and that place is a mikedash. And the Beit HaMikdash is going to be shaped with the hands of God, right? So that's the pasuk. So what is the relationship between the previous statement of Rabbi Elazar that says that wisdom was sandwiched between the two names of God, right? And I explain what that means. And this pasuk which says that the Beit HaMikdash is sandwiched between the two names of God. You understand my question? What's the relationship? What is the significance of this? Yeah? Any ideas? I'll explain it. Also from my father, Alav Shalom. So he says there are two types, or there are two levels of intelligence. There is the individual, and the individual as an individual has a personal experience, and he recognizes that experience, or maybe you have a dream and you feel it's a message from God. Okay, that's personal. I wake up, I have a derasha, and I feel like, God put the derasha in my mouth. You have something creative, maybe in business, you think of something. Wow, so suddenly the idea came up. What an unbelievable idea. Just in business, you feel it's from Hashem. Okay, so this is the creative part of our minds through which God communicates with us. But that's individual. We believe that there was also a collective consciousness. And the collective consciousness of the nation is above the individual members of the nation. So the Bet HaMikdash was where the Shekhinah is present, not just for the individual, but for the entire nation of Israel. Meaning, God doesn't just want us as individuals relating with Him. He wants the nation of Israel to wake up to His presence. And there is a book that we read once a week, which deals about the special relation between God and the Jewish nation as a nation, where God is saying, I'm here, let me in. Which book?
Haftarah.
No, not the Haftarah, but good guess. I mean, no, fair, by the way, you're right. Meaning many of the Haftarot do contain that theme. So yes, but there's an actual book that we read every Friday night, Shir HaShirim. Shir HaShirim, where he says, Pitkeli, Achoti Rayati Onati Tamati, open the doors for me, my beloved. Shiroshinim Latali. God compares himself to to a husband who wants his wife to let him into the house, and it's dark and it's nighttime. There were no doorbells back then, and he's knocking on the door, but she's sleeping. She's sleeping, and he says, "Wake up! I'm here." And it says that the hair of the husband is filled with dew because he was out at night, and he's waiting for the wife to open up the door. So he says, "Wake up, let me in." So God is saying, the galut, you're in exile. I haven't been with you for so long. Open up your doors and let me, God, into your nation, into the nation, because I want to establish this relationship with you, right? So that's a book of Shir HaShirim, right? And many, many Pesukim in Shir HaShirim that have that same theme of God saying, I want to have, so he's trying to get our attention. So October 7th is the best example. It happened at the individual level, but at the national level, I described to you what happened in the mall in Israel just today. So God has a way of drawing our attention. So now, this is all going to be superficial, because once the Bet HaMikdash happens, it's going to be over. That's it. There's going to be no more doubt, meaning God will make his presence clear to all of Am Yisrael, and there's going to be a transformation within the people. There will be an eternal transformation. And at that point, it'll be, meaning the third Bet HaMikdash won't be like the first Bet HaMikdash that was around for 410 years. It won't be like the second Bet HaMikdash that was around for 420 years. The third Bet HaMikdash will be an eternal Bet HaMikdash, so that the special relationship between God and Am Yisrael will be permanent, and we will always have this special wisdom in the nation. That's what the pasuk says, that when the Mashiach comes, the nations of the world will look at the nation of Israel, and they will see the wisdom of God upon us, and they will be in awe of the Jewish people. They will be in awe of us, right? The Chachamim say elu tefillin shel rosh. The symbol of this is the tefillin shel rosh, because you literally have the name of God on the tefillin shel rosh. So the nation of Israel will be, so to speak, the nation that has the tefillin, and people will be in awe of our wisdom and our holiness. So that's going to happen once the Bet HaMikdash is around. What time is it, by the way? I don't have a watch. And
9:30.
what, 9?
5 minutes after 9.
Okay, so good. So tell me when we get to, we started 8:15, right? So tell me when we get to 9:15 or 9:14. Give me like a 1 minute notice, please. All right? Jeff, do you want to pour me some water? Can I get you some water or something?
I'm good. It's just
You want?
thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right,
I just want to ask a question.
please.
Why do you think the sequence was Bet HaMikdash 1, 2, and now 3? Why wasn't it just 1 and the final one? Why do we have one in between? What do you think the...
Amen. It's a very good question. First of all, part of the earmark of a healthy individual is not to be perfect, but to always learn from your mistakes. Meaning, you're going to make mistakes. You have to accept the fact that as a human being, you make mistakes, but you rise up and you overcome those mistakes, and you get to become a better person. And maybe you'll make another mistake, and you'll rise up from that. There's a pasuk that says, "Kisheva yipol sadik bakam." Very good. Bakam. That what makes a person a sadiq? So in Christianity, you have saints. They're perfect. They never make any mistakes. In Judaism, you have sadiqim. A sadiq is a person who falls down, and he fell down even 7 times. What makes him great is that every single time he falls, he gets up again and becomes better and better and better. First, Bet HaMikdash taught us, reject Avodah Zarah. It's nonsense. And no, we didn't want to reject it, and we were this and that and fighting, and finally the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, and it was a horrible, traumatic experience. But we never did Avodah Zarah after that. I mean, as a nation, Avodah Zarah was eradicated. Second Bet HaMikdash between God and Am Yisrael. Second Bet HaMikdash is people learn to love each other, learn to respect each other. I know we were fighting and Sirat Hinam, and it was insane what happened. Following when the Romans came, they couldn't destroy the Jewish nation because we were so powerful, and then the Jews were fighting, and some of the Jews burnt all the grain that was in Jerusalem, so there was starvation. I mean, you listen to the story, like, what are you talking about? That's actually what happened, right? They actually burned the grain, like, to fight against each other. They were burning each other's fields, and probably there was no food to eat, like, mabrur. You got the field burnt, like, good move there. Anyway, excuse my cynicism, because I'm just amazed at who these people were and what they were thinking. Yeah, and then the Romans came in and destroyed. now we were on the verge of reaching that. My wife tells me when she was in Israel, there was tremendous tension on October 4th and 5th. Leading up to the holiday, people were nervous and tense, and people did religious, anti-religious, secular, and there was like all this. They knew Simchat Torah is coming up, and there's going to be fighting. People were getting ready for the fight, a fight because of what happened in Yom Kippur. So like a fight, a bloody fight. Like everyone's like riled up, like even the religious were riled up. I'm not blaming. I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong. I'm just describing. There was tremendous tension where the religious realized they're going to come to us again, and we're going to be ready this time. And it was like just people were just nasty to each other. And had that happened, Bar Minan, it would have been over. God forbid. Instead, God turned it around. So we kind of learned the lesson. We rose up from that mistake. We were on the verge of doing it, and we had a choice. And now everybody is in it together. Everybody made a conscious decision. I don't care about religious, irreligious. We're all brothers. I do care, in the sense, of course, I care about religion and Torah and Mitzvot, and I wish everybody does Torah and Mitzvot, but that's not a basis for me to hate my fellow Jew. I will not hate my fellow Jew. You saw that beautiful picture of my son's unit. I just love it. I have to print it out. I wanna print it out and frame it. And like you look at these boys, it's just such a beautiful picture. It's just so, like you see that, they're all about, this is literally when they were about to enter Gaza. This is Sunday morning, right before they were about to enter. And this is a unit. They're all beautiful boys. I'm going to hate this guy because he doesn't have a kippah, and I love this one. All right, my son is here. This is Joey. I can't see it. I'll frame it eventually. All right, let me see if I can make it bigger. I know you want to see Joey, right? So let me see if I can make this. I know, yeah. All right, I'll let you see it here. I have to open it in a different program, but that's him.
Yeah, it looked like him.
That's him. Anyway, so everybody's together. They all love each other. There's religious boys, there's secular boys, there's Ethiopians, there's different adult. Nobody cares. They're all brothers in arms. Literally brothers in arms. So that's the Achdut. And so people made a decision. We're not going to do what we did in the Second Temple. We are going to be unified. And that's it. So one is between God and man, the other is between man and man. And now that we have God and man set up and man set up, that's it. Third Bet HaMikdash, eternal. You got it? Okay. I think maybe, yes. Keep going.
Just a follow-up on his question is, doesn't it change the mindset of the people living during that time where you know that this is not eternal?
Well, they didn't know.
So it wasn't known that...
They didn't know, yeah. Maybe the Nevi'im knew, but the Nevi'im would never say it. Because even if the Navi says a Nevu'ah Pur'anut, a bad Nevu'ah, we can change a bad Nevu'ah for good. You can't change a good nevuah will never not happen. Meaning, if a Navi says something good is going to happen, but a bad nevuah can be changed for good. So even that, we could have theoretically made a decision. You know what? Our enemy is not ourselves. Our enemy is the Romans. Let's fight them. They didn't do what we did. Meaning, back then, even though the Romans were surrounding Jerusalem, they continued fighting. Now, when the Romans, the Palestinians, surrounded Israel, we said, the heck with this fighting. We're all getting together. So you see, we made teshuvah over those days. We recognize who the enemy is. But there are many Smolanim, many left-wing Jews. They gave it up. They gave it up. I see this news program late at night here in America. It's like the earlier news in Israel, right? It's all set. So 12 midnight, I decided to watch a little TV. I can't study anymore. And you see they're sitting there, this guy who was left wing all his life. And he's and he said they're all the same. Yeah. There's still, by the way, you still have some Marxist loonies in Israel. That's the truth. I'm not they're still there. Okay, you have a country, any country, if you have 1 million people, you have a few loonies. So what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? What are you going to do? You know Joey the Hazan, right? That's him, yeah. All right, God bless all of these boys, they're beautiful boys.
All of them Jewish?
Yes, in this pluga, they're all Jewish. There's a few from Ethiopia, different countries. Right, the son of the president of Israel is one of these boys. Yeah, Herzog. Yeah. This is an elite commando unit. So they are it's a quality. This is a quality team. Anyway, God should protect them. They're in wow. All right, what time is it? In Khan Yunis.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen the pictures of what's happening there? It's crazy.
He's in Khan Yunis now?
Yeah. That day, Sunday, they that's it. That was the last day they were in Israel. Right after this picture was taken, the commander of the unit sent it to the parents. So, we know they're going. He gave us this picture, so we have it, and now we're getting.
They travel on foot, or they're going in with tanks?
No, they took them in armored vehicles to I can't say how they entered. but anyway, they took them there when they're there. Yeah, but it was vehicles. It wasn't, they didn't walk there. Exactly. Okay, so what time is
They
it?
killed a lot of them today, no? The big one.
Yeah, they got a bunch of the leaders.
They find them.
They're very smart. Yeah, they got a bunch of the Hamas. What they're doing is they're cutting off the heads. And this is causing disarray among the ranks. Very smart. The next step is Zrat Hashem is they have to flood the tunnels with seawater. There's no other way.
Yeah, I read that they were thinking of doing
They have to flood the tunnels with seawater, and
The
that's
whole
it.
city is gonna be
Everything. The whole thing is going to
The whole
collapse.
city-
The whole infrastructure is going to collapse. The water is going to be ruined. The buildings will collapse because all the buildings are built on tunnels. I mean, well, the other way around. They put the tunnels under the buildings. Okay, this is the price. You voted for Hamas. You support Hamas. They took a poll. Do you like raping Jewish little kids and then putting them in ovens? Yes. 75% yes. There was 10% that were indifferent to that. Indifferent to baking babies in ovens. Way to go. That. So they're not all fanatics. 75% were for it. 10% were indifferent. And the other 15% were afraid that if it's Hamas calling them on the phone, they'll come in and kill them, chop them into little pieces. So what?
I heard tighter numbers than that.
Yeah, exactly. So
Especially in the West Bank.
the West Bank is actually worse. So anyway, that's a crazy thing.
And
But
the Nazis in the city are getting even more and more upset and angry.
yeah.
In New York, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. By the way, during the ceasefire, there was still protesting for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
These men, they don't even know what they're saying. They have a very low mental acuity. But okay, what are you gonna do? That's the situation. I think it's 9:15, right?
9/12.
9:12. Okay, so
We have
tomorrow I
time.
have what?
We have time.
Okay, we'll do another passage. Okay.
I have a question about the light.
Yeah.
So what's this light? You're explaining it well.
Right.
but
So
what-
first of all, right now we have access to it in a very limited way, in the sense of the chokhmah that comes to our mind. But when the Bet HaMikdash is built, remember we spoke about last week. I think you were with us last week. Yeah, we spoke about the light of the sun is going to be unbelievable, and the light of the moon, meaning the wisdom that appears to us today, it's going to be minuscule when compared to what's going to happen in the days of the Mashiach. There's going to be such an immense wisdom coming from God that Pasuk says, even little children will have access to unbelievable prophecies where they're going to break the barrier of time and space, and they're going to see things that today we can't even imagine, right? So it's going to be a total transformation.
So when someone says, "I see the light," and is it?
Oh, but I mean, the
See the
expression "I see the light" is it actually is a biblical expression, but we have to also be careful because some people what they associate with light is actually C.G. Young speaks about the numinous, which means sometimes people have an ecstatic experience, but it's a projection of their inner psyche on the outer world. So not every ecstatic experience is a genuine intelligence from God. So how do we measure intelligence versus just, projection? And the answer is if a person has an intelligent experience, you should be able to articulate it and tell the message. So if I give you a derasha, if I have a derasha and it comes to my mind, I can actually articulate it. And here's my derasha. If I'm an artist, I have a beautiful way of looking at these lily pads, and I'll draw the lily pads, and you see it. That's inspired. I can tell that's inspired. Beautiful musical composition. Wow. That's gorgeous, right? So you see it, right? You feel it, you experience it. One more thing in the Gemara because you asked for it, and I'm just going to say that tomorrow I have a live feed at 8:45. For those of you who want to join me on Instagram, I'm going to be talking about the situation in Israel, what's happening from the perspective of the Torah, where it's going. So it should be an interesting thing. 8:45 on my Instagram feed. You can join me there. Let's do one more Rabbi Elazar. מתקיף לרווחה, כלחנה אלא מעטה. Are you saying that also revenge is something unbelievable? Because there's a pasuk that says, "Tichtiv el nekamot Adonai el nekamot ofia." You see the word nekama, right? Is sandwiched by Hashem, right? El, that's God's name. Nekamot, revenge, Hashem. So is revenge also something that we? Okay. So I want to
say this, right?
in Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So first of all, what does it mean? It means God is a vengeful God. Yes, it's true. Meaning, God brings tremendous things of beauty and grace to the world and has amazing compassion upon his creations. But at the same time, if push comes to shove and we keep going and we keep repeating, like, look what's happening to humanity today, for crying out loud. I mean, people have gone completely crazy, right? There's whatever, don't want to say it on the camera, but you all know some of the woke ideology that's taken over humanity, and people are becoming completely crazy. Becomes a point in time where God is going to say enough is enough. So there is a vengeful aspect to God. But why is the vengeance encompassed by the names of God? We know intelligence, yes. Bet HaMikdash, yes. Why vengeance? We'll study that next week. I don't want to rush it because it's actually an amazing epiphany what the vengeance of God really is. What does that mean? I want to explain it next week. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure to have you in my house. Wow.